Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. I really appreciate it. In this episode, I'd like to talk about bootlegs. Bootlegs themselves have been around since the beginning of the 70s, Elvis bootlegs that is, and they've always divided opinion really. You've got people that have never been supporters of bootlegs, seeing them as they are, illegal, unofficial releases. And, I completely appreciate that and I get that. I think from my point of view, the thing that I kind of see bootlegs as is that, well, if you look at the official label, the Elvis estate gets no royalties from his recordings pre-1973 because under the deal him and the Colonel made in 73, anything recorded up until that stage was sold off to the record company. So the estate only makes money on post 73 recordings. So, I find it hard to have loyalty from that aspect because it's not like, well, I'm doing the estate out of money, because that's not the case for the majority of the material. But, as I said, I completely get people that fans that only want legitimate source material. Completely understand that. But I think bootlegs, they served a really important purpose throughout the years. As they started to take hold from the 70s onwards and material came out that fans had never heard, live recordings they'd never heard, outtakes they'd never heard, versions that they just couldn't get anywhere else. There was a real demand for this. Of course there was, otherwise there'd been no need for the bootleggers to make their product. But I think the knock-on effect is really important. I think it could probably be argued that if it wasn't for the bootleggers presenting fans with alternate takes, outtakes of recordings, RCA and certainly if we go back to 1980 and the Silver Box and Joan Deary sort of presenting Elvis fans with a lot of outtakes and different versions that they'd never heard before, I wonder if that had even happened if the bootleggers hadn't kind of paved the way and made RCA realise that there was an appetite for this. Because it could be argued that unless that had been sort of brought to their attention, then they may not have even got around to that way of thinking. They may have thought, well, who wants to hear, Elvis in the studio doing a take that wasn't used as the master? So I think the bootleggers played an important role in that. Let's face it, if it wasn't for the bootleggers, FTD wouldn't exist. The reason it was set up was to try and put bootleggers out of business. I mean, that hasn't been particularly successful, has it? But that was the reasoning behind it, to put that product out there to fans in an official way, so there'd be no need for the black market of recordings, if you like. So I think bootlegs have played an enormous importance throughout the years, presenting material that no one had heard before, or was really hard to get hold of. So I've got a real soft spot for bootlegs. Now it's getting more and more difficult as time goes on to really understand what is and isn't a bootleg, because from 2004, when the original Sun recordings started to be out of copyright, if you like, in Europe because of some loophole in the law that meant that after 50 years from the original recording, then they could be re-released legitimately without any infringement. So this happens from 2004 and then we go right to 2013. So for that period, and you've got Elvis's recordings from 54 through to 1963 in Europe, public domain recordings and perfectly legitimate to release legally, distribute legally. Then you've got a further grey area with the sound recordings. So you've got a label like MRS now that this year they're putting material out from 1974 and they're allowed to do that legitimately. Their recordings are sold in record shops. Their releases, are sold in record shops. They're on Amazon. They're on all the websites you can think of to purchase, because they are legitimately allowed to sell them. So when is a bootleg not a bootleg? That line has got a lot more blurred in recent times. And the other thing about bootlegs is, right from the off, they were cannibalistic. So if a particular bootleg was popular, eventually it would get bootlegged. And it would either get bootlegged exactly the same as it was originally, or they might make some changes. But, that nature of just putting them out and keep putting them out started from the very beginning. Obviously, in the digital age, in the age of CDs, it became a lot easier. It's a lot easier to just take somebody's CD, rip it, reissue it yourself. It was more difficult in the vinyl age, when you had to press vinyl yourself, but it became easier. And I think, the way bootlegs have gone in the last, I'm going to say, decade or so, we don't really see anything brand new, do we, really, anymore? We've heard most of it. You might get the occasional show that will come out and it will say, this show's been released for the first time ever, but usually it's quite a ropey sounding audience recording that they managed to dredge out. It's not often that we hear a brand new show we've never heard before in really decent quality. And I think that's the way bootlegs have gone. They either take the material that's been out there and kind of, if we're talking about studio recordings, and repackage it as a different concept. So it might be, this was the album Elvis might have made in 1967 or whatever. Taking stuff that's already out there, giving it nice packaging, but really not offering anything that you couldn't put together yourself with a decent burner. And then, we see the same with concerts. We see the same concerts pretty much coming out again and again, and they usually say, super enhanced sound quality, and sometimes they are, but not always. Super enhanced sound quality, and they'll give it a nice fancy packaging, but it'll be a show we've heard before. So I think that sort of cyclical nature of, bootlegs just keep rinse and repeat seems to be, that's how it is now. But back in the day, and I'm going to talk really specifically about vinyl bootlegs, because I think CD bootlegs are a whole different ballgame. And the reason I want to talk about bootlegs is to highlight two fantastic books. This is Bootleg Elvis, and I've also got a sequel that came out by the same people. This is, and this is a term I think I've used myself when I say this is the Bible of this, that, or whatever it might be. But this is the Bible of vinyl bootleg. It's a phenomenally good book as a reference, as almost a social history of what went on. You can't do, but if you're into Elvis vinyl bootlegs in any way, shape or form, you can't go much better than this. It is hard to get hold of. I've seen people ask ridiculous prices for it. If you're lucky, you might pay £150. If you're not lucky, you could be 3-4 times that I've seen it go for, because it's out of print and it was a limited run anyway. But what it produces, it's put together in such an intelligent way. You get your historical bits and pieces at the beginning. They're actually on a different paper stock to when they show the records themselves. So you've got like a flat matte paper stock, because they figured that these original documents and material that they were going to show would look better on a flat, if you like, paper stock. And then we go into gloss and we end the book back in matte again for some of the original extracts and pieces. But it is it's an immensely great read and record of the development and the history of Elvis bootlegs, and and what went on behind them. And then in the middle section, you get a guide to all the bootlegs, and it tells you all the various permutations, the reissues. It grades them. It's such a brilliant resource for, as I say, anyone that has a love and an interest of Elvis vinyl bootlegs. The way it presents information is so clearly laid out. So it starts with, where do we start? It's broken up into sections. So we get an index at the beginning. So it should be reasonably easy to look things up. And then we start with Bootleg 7-inch singles. And then each section is split up in various alphabetical divisions. You get a nice like header page through, and then you go through all of the releases under that particular letter, or those particular letters, the alphabet. You get to see them all in fantastic detail, all the counterfeits. MS. It is beautiful. It took me quite a while to track this one down because I wasn't prepared to pay the crazy money that people were asking. So it did take me a while to get hold of this one. But boy, when I did, it's just fantastic. I kind of made it obvious in the past that I really like a detailed discography, and this is the only. I say that probably the only drawback of this is when it was published, which, if I remember rightly, does it have the information? So this is Felix, I think that's pronounced Gubelli, who's the editor, and I don't know if we've got a publication date here anyway. Lots and lots of people have had input in the credits, but I don't know. I want to say, so behind the book we got Felix Gubelli, apologies if I'm butchering that, Rolf Gilgen, Peter von Bratt, Dick Decker, and Bruno Pors. So they're the 5 names behind the book, and then we get a really big list of credits of other people that have helped in some way or been involved. So edition 1,000 copies. Right, so there is 1,000 copies of it. More info, bootlegelvis.com. I doubt that's still active, but I don't think. Oh, wait a minute, 2012. Copyright 2012. So, I suppose when you think about it, that leads you through the, if you like, the golden age of bootlegs and up to reasonable contemporary times. But I guess after 2012, those lines between bootleg and public domain legitimate releases are probably quite blurred. So I was going to say this is probably a little bit out of date, but in terms of vinyl bootlegs, I don't think that's really an issue. So then we get 12-inch long play albums and maxi singles, and it follows the same pattern wherein we get an alphabetical split with a header page, and then we go through each release. And you see some of the really famous releases along the way. So yeah, what I wanted to do really, I wanted to give a feel for what this book represents, and having just seen that there are only 1,000 copies of it, it kind of makes sense, I guess, why the prices seem to go through the roof on this one, because it is pretty scarce and hard to get hold of. But having said that, if you're a huge vinyl collector and you're also a bootleg collector and you don't have this, I'd say definitely keep your eye out for it, because it's really, really invaluable. I'm going to sort of try and illustrate why I think that before we then have a look at the book that came out after it. So if I go through to, because I don't have a tremendous amount of bootleg vinyl, I've got some, but I thought it would be worth having a look at the vinyl I have and what this book shows, so that you can see how it approaches it. So the first bootleg I have is the first bootleg. This is Please Release Me. This is a bit of a tatty copy, but I think I showed this at the time. I picked this up at a car boot sale for about £6-7 if I remember. So Please Release Me. Let's have a look in our alphabetical index for Please Release Me. Please Release Me, page 440. And this is where the only thing that lets me down is my eyesight. Right, so we've got Please Release Me. And there you see it begins down here. LP Holland 1970. This is the very first Presley bootleg album ever. The front cover has a unique pen and ink drawing of Elvis performing at the International Hotel in Las Vegas in February 1970, which seems to jump out from the sleeve. The flip side lists the songs for each side and offers an interesting read in the form of copious liner notes to this album that had just been released, because it contains songs and things from a decade in music that will always be remembered. They are credited to Barry Silver. The idea to link the album... So, the first pressing of this, it says, the cover is light and semi-glossy. I wouldn't say this is semi-glossy. It looks fairly matte to me. The first pressing, the label is yellow, printed in black. First Records number 161 on top. So let's have a look. So there's the back cover it was talking about, and the notes, as you see, there's a few stains going on there. So, First Records number 161 on top, Matrix 151A, and it says it is yellow, printing in black. So, on the strength of that, and it's credited to just Aaron P. Look, on the strength of that, this looks like it's the first issue. So, what does it say about it then? Sound quality 2.0 to 3.5, and I think their gradings go up to 5. So it says, we do not think the brave person responsible for this album could have foreseen what would happen in the Elvis bootleg world in the years to come. We have to be thankful that he started it all by offering a decent quality product to highlight the unreleased movie soundtracks and television appearances, which in most cases are different to the commercially available versions of the songs. Even more interesting, and adding a great deal to this album, is the fact that A Cane in a High Starch Collar and Dominic were never before available on record. Not that we don't want to, but press run of only 500 copies. So it says at a pressing run of 500 copies, then it says, this was 1970, in 79, it says there was a counterfeit. Darker printing, slightly blown up, with Elvis back extending all the way to the left hand. Okay. And what does it say? Yellow printing and button. If you see, this is the thing where the bootlegs of the bootlegs get hard to identify, I think, because a lot of times it seems they will even use the same label. So if you did purchase if you did purchase your copy of Please Release Me while Elvis Presley was still alive, you will have gotten an original pressing. With the King dead and gone, a Southern Florida go-getter who had hit it big on the gold market took the chance and started to reproduce every bootleg he could get his hands on. Please Release Me being no exception. With the overall appearance coming very close to the initial product, there is only one safe way to unmistakably identify this counterfeit. The matrix number in the runoff portion of the wax is handwritten, while the original pressing has its typeset similar to commercial records. Oh, right, so what are we going to find? I would say this is an original, and I don't even know if that's going to possibly come out on camera, but I don't know if I could. But there's a definite stamped number there. That is not handwritten. That is stamped. So, on that strength, that book's telling me this is an original press from 1970. Whether that's true or not, I'm not entirely sure. But, you know, it goes through the material and it tells you exactly what you're getting. So, that's really handy for that one. So, let's look at the next sort of chronological bootleg I have, which is The Legend Lives On. Nice release at the time. So, The Legend Lives On. Apologies, this is going to be quite a bit of me squinting at print that's very small. But Legend Lives On, page 205. Talk amongst yourselves while I get there. Legend Lives On, here we go. So, The first entry I've got here for The Legend Lives On says 10-inch counterfeit Holland, 1985 to 86, but that isn't right. That's the bootleg of it. But where's the original? Where is the original? Oh, interesting. That must have been a one of the smaller, probably 10-inch. Maybe did they do a 10-inch of it? Because I'm now in the LP section, and we should find it here. Here we go. Yeah, I think that was a. Maybe a 10-inch counterfeit of it, because we were early on in the book there. I thought that was a little bit odd. Right, so the index didn't let us down there, didn't it? Right, here we go. Legend Lives On, LP USA 1977, Presley Collection Series. So, this says that the original pressing from the USA in 77, and this was quite a landmark release. So this was released while Elvis was still alive, and it says, "What a thrill! In a time when the king of rock and roll was no longer rocking but rather rolling through the nation, this bootlegger came up with truly magnificent live recordings, taped at the peak of Elvis' performing career." The first thing you will hear is Elvis's hearty laughter and his great sense of humour as he reminisces about the good old days, sitting in a big Cadillac, feet up, drinking Pepsi. The songs on this side, besides the never-ending Hey Jude and band introductions full of jokes, are very close to the officially available versions, and they make the last 20 or so minutes of an August 1969 Las Vegas concert. I'm not going to read all that because it's quite a paragraph on it, but you do get quite a lot of detail that talks about it. So it does give a narrative on each of them. So this says that the sound quality 2.5 to 4.5, X generation tapes, early generation tapes, stereo, partially muffled. So you do get an idea of what you're going to be hearing. So this says that the original pressing from 77, the label was light blue, printing in black, 1956 Elvis head in Presley Collection Series on top. So let's see what we get here. definitely not light blue, so that's not a first pressing. So the second pressing was in USA 1977. The colour green used to print the album title is different, more of a grass green. Not sure whether that's grass green or not. Everything else appears to be identical. Label off-white, printing in black, 1956 Elvis and Presley collection series on top. Off-white. Well, I'd say that was off-white. So this looks, on the face of it, to be a 77. But then we've got a third pressing, 1977-78, and that says the label's light tan, printing in black. Well, I'd say that's off-white rather than light tan, because they show the light tan one, and it's definitely more sort of coffee coloured. So I'd say this is a 77 original, I believe. Now, why it says produced in Canada on the back when they're all given them as US, I don't know. So it was then repressed again in 1979, fourth pressing, but that had a blue label. So I think this kind of tells me that this is probably a second press from 77. So, you know, it's really handy stuff, but it is a little bit hit and miss in trying to find which version you've got. Right, so From the Beach to the Bayou. Absolutely blankety blank back, and I think if I remember rightly we've got supposedly Graceland records with a yellow label. So let's have a look. From the Beach to Bayou. I'm not going to look at that index because that threw me out last time. We're just going to go towards the back and we're going to go F, and it might well be easier doing it this way. From the Beach to the Bayou. There we go. There's our entries. From the Beach to the Bayou. Now, you can see there that pressing had a completely different cover. So that was the third edition. Now then. Right. So it says that the original version mistakenly had the name of the bootlegger on the cover. There. When it was repressed, they put a white banner over that to cover that. So that might suggest that this is an original 1978 press. But by the look of it, it was then pressed again in 86. And this was in Holland. So the original version, right, the original version was Graceland Records LP 101, which that is. And that was US 1978. Then you've got one in 78 that had the white banner on, and then you've got a completely different blue cover with the pictures in colour. But then, oh, that's right. So this the one issued in 86 in Holland, instead of at least copying the original cover, the lesser quality counterfeit was used instead. The result is dreadful. The rainbow colours are pale. The photos look washed out, in addition show a disturbing crosshatch, a very negative side effect from printing a copy of a careless previous work. Well, there's no crosshatching on there, and it doesn't look washed out to me. So I think this is an original from 78. That's where I'm putting it at. And what does it say about it? 2.5 to 4 on the sound quality. Acetate, vinyl mono, partially muffled, partially distorted, additional surface noise. Sounds a treat, doesn't it? Oh dear. When it's tempted, yeah. And funnily enough, I think they say that the sound quality on the original is actually worse than the later reissues. Yeah. So fascinating. Right, so what have we got next? What we've got next, I think, is one of the most spectacularly gorgeous bootleg vinyl covers ever. This is just fantastic. Now this I picked up not long ago, beginning of the year, I think, at a record fair. Look at that. just look at that. The Jailhouse Rock Sessions. It's on Laurel Records, it says. Just utterly, what a cover. Let's see what they say about this. Right. Jay. I say, talk amongst yourselves. That must be. Oh, where's Jay? That's the only problem when I can't rely on that index, because it took me to a different bit last time. So there we go. There's the entry on that particular release. And it identifies this as 1982 Holland, and it was pressed again in 1987. So that's interesting. So it says the original, black and yellow, print in yellow and black reversed. And you see there's no difference. How do you tell the difference? The original... Overall, sound is similar. You would forget about this low rate product. You would not be very happy with it. So it says that the original is fantastic. The front, what does it say? Should there ever be an award given for the most outstanding Elvis bootleg artwork, this album would most probably rank among the top 5. It says that the content, studio masters, the people responsible for this release not only have a heart but also unbelievable talent. It says thanks a lot. Sound quality 5 to 5.5. Oh, we must go to 5.5 actually. Early generation tapes, acetates, mono, partial additional service noise. We award this album a very high rating and recommend it to every serious Elvis fan. It doesn't get much better than this. But it says that the counterfeit, which followed 5 years later, although the overall sound reproduction is similar to original, the quality of packaging is substandard, and this should be enough to turn off almost every potential buyer. Forget about this low rate product, you would not be very happy with it. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've listened to it and it sounds fine. So I don't know if this is an 82 original or a counterfeit. It doesn't help that they seem to counterfeit the labels. So this is on the yellow and black that they were talking about. But you see what I mean? It does get very difficult to understand because they're talking about, well, if you see the second cover, it's really, really substandard. Well, that doesn't look substandard to me at all. So I don't think I have got a copy of a copy, but I can't be sure. Okay, let's move on. We've got, now this one's really cheeky. At least the bootlegs we've seen up to this stage have their own labels, so anyone looking at them, you know, isn't going to think they're getting official product, presumably. I did show this one once before, but this is a complete and utter rip-off of the album. I believe it was South African, Tickle Me, the only place that actually got an LP based on the Tickle Me soundtrack. But it's really, really naughty. You know, step beyond the pale, really, when you go to the trouble of counterfeiting an RCA label. I mean, that's really an attempt to fool people, isn't it? Let's see what it says about this one then. So we should be on Tickle Me. Here we go again. Sifting through Tickle Me. Okay. LP acetate UK 1980. But I think the original says that, what's it say about the label? The label on the original is white, printing in red, original sound on top. So this isn't a 1980 pressing, but then the counterfeit 1987 label black, printed in silver, RCA logo on top. So this is the counterfeit of the counterfeit from 1987. And it said the bootlegger obviously went through a lot of pain to come up with a nice product, and so the overall presentation of this counterfeit is excellent, down to carefully reproducing the original black RCA Victor labels for the record. But, and there lies the problem, it's not an original pressing. It is a known fact that no serious collector would ever settle for a counterfeit, but would go out of his way to find an original copy of either a foreign RCA release or a bootleg product for its usually superior appearance, better fidelity, and last but not least for its sometimes amazing high collectability and value. So what does that say? To an original copy of either a foreign RCA release or a bootleg product. That seems to be contradictory. It seems to me what they're saying is a serious collector, and obviously that means I'm not a serious collector, would go out of their way to get the original list, so they would have no interest in having a knockoff cheap copy of it. But I have got a knockoff cheap copy of it, so obviously I'm not a serious collector. Maybe not. I'm quite happy with this, you know. I kind of like the fact that it's blatantly cheeky, but you know, that is what it is. I'm not a serious collector. Right, so next, now we've got my final three vinyls are 3 releases from Bilko. And we've got Lost on Tour, and where were we? So we need to go back to L, Lost on Tour. So Bilko 1989, Bilko Enterprises, a fantastic album-size colour shot of Presley performing at the Chicago Stadium on June 16th, 1972 adorns the front cover. So is there a counterfeit of it? So yes, there was a counterfeit, but they were both almost impossible to tell this counterfeit apart from the original pressing without placing both versions side by side. Well, in which case I'm not going to be able to, so we'll go with the fact that this is an original. So there's your Bilko label, and yeah, a really nice product. All 3 of these Bilkos that I've got are really nice. So then we've got Stax tracks. As it says, these are tracks from 73 at Stax. That's a pink label. So let's see. Oops, did I just whack the camera there? Sorry about that. So, Stax tracks. Stax tracks. We're on R. I wish the index was more useful. Here we go. So Holland 89, Bilko Enterprises, label very light grey, printing in black. And then it said it was counterfeited the same year. But it still says Bilko Enterprises, but it says light pink printed in black. Well, that's light pink. So that's the second one. But, you know, you really do get a great idea of what these releases are. If it's one you're looking out for, you've got your sound grading. So this says these are acetate, stereo, inferior, and additional surface noise. So they're not selling it, are they? But I kind of think it's worth it for the cover alone. There's Stax tracks. And the last one I just wanted to look at was another Bilko, and this is Yesterday Today. Another great cover, actually from exactly the same set of photographs as Stax tracks, and neither of them in terms of cover are really representative of the material on it, because this is basically, I believe, outtakes, undubbed versions of the Today album from 75, whereas we've got a shot there, I'm going 69, 70, probably 69 I would have thought, because it could be 70. But what colour label do we have? So we've got the blue there, So if we follow the pattern on the other one, the blue was first and then pink was second. Let's see what we've got under Y. Yesterday, Today, 89 Bilko records, and actually there's only one version of it. Light blue, printed in black, Bilko on top. Sound quality 5 to 5.5. Vinyl stereo, slight additional surface noise. 2-channel mixes from the initial 4-channel quadraphonic masters for the commercial album Elvis Today. So, yeah, there we go. There's your Stax tracks. No, that's not. It's Yesterday, Today. And at the back, you get more information, more detailed articles on some of the original bootlegs. Just a glorious book. More than just a reference. Great reading, great detail. This is fabulous. 5-star. And in a similar vein, sometime later, I think this was 2016, we got this one. So the artistry of Elvis bootlegs, 7-inch to 10-inch from cover to vinyl. And this shows you the detail in you don't get any commentary really. This really wants to show you, you do get a commentary at the beginning and end, but you know, as you saw there on that one, each release is detailed, whereas this one just shows you the releases. It shows you the releases, it shows you the labels, it shows you the cover, but you don't get any commentary there in there. But what I wanted to do again, I wanted to just, because I think this one is much easier to pick up. You can pick this up if you keep your eye out. About between £50 to £70, I'd say, should secure you a copy of this, and it really is worth having as another work of reference on bootlegs. It's got a fantastic article in the back which shows you all there was a famous FBI sting and raid on bootleggers in the late 70s, 78 through to 80, I think it went through. And this shows you all the FBI files, all the paperwork on that bootleg, which make fascinating reading and really are a sort of encapsulation of that time. But let's do the same with what I did with the others. I've got three of the 7-inch and 10-inch that fall into here. So we will try to find Love Me Tender. He says. That's quite interesting, actually. For anyone that saw my episode on my 1969 recordings, and I showed the Thomas Street box set, and it came with a vinyl. It's even got the vinyl that came from. It says it comes from vinyl CD box 827 Thomas Street. So, you know, you're getting absolutely every bootleg they can find. But I wanted to show Love Me Tender, and I can't. What are we on? Are we on singles? Because I know I've seen that in here, but I've just got to M and it isn't there. So I don't know whether we have an index. That's the only problem. If you've not got an index, I think we're gonna. It does definitely show it, but I can't find it. So we'll look at a couple of the 10 inches that I have, because these are Japanese releases, which you know, I think are fascinating in themselves, because the Japanese releases, although they're 10-inch, so you know, you can tell they're not the originals. They're so close to the originals. Let's have a look at Good Rockin' Tonight. So, Good Rockin' Tonight. Just these are really hard. The fact that they're 10 inches give them away, but you know, they've got the original RCA Victor label, and that's produced in a lot better quality than that other Victor label that I just showed. And they come in a variety of colours. This one's a red vinyl, but good rocking tonight. There we go. 10-inch counterfeit UK Japan 2013, and it shows you the front and back cover, and then you get the 3 variants of colour that were released, and we saw that with the red one. Now the other one that I have is the Elvis number 2, again 2006 actually, this one. 10-inch counterfeit UK Japan, and as you can see that came out in a variety of colours. I have a purple vinyl that's framed on my wall, but this particular one here, so well done. I mean, the reproduction of the HMV label, and this is green marble, but such a fantastic counterfeit. You'd struggle for the fact that but it's a 10-inch and it's coloured vinyl, so clearly it's not an original, and it's nothing to do with HMV either. I know some people were fooled by that issue and thought that HMV had put it out, but it isn't, because it's in here. It's a bootleg. I don't know where Love Me Tender's gone, because I thought it was in here. In fact, I know it's in here, but it, for some reason, didn't come under L, which is bizarre. Love in Arms, Love Me Tender, but that's different. They're singles. I need EPs. I need EPs, that's what it is. Sorry, fascinating viewing again, I know. 7-inch extended play albums. Here we go. So we should be on Love Me Tender somewhere. H, I, J, E, F, G. Whew, here we go. That took a while, didn't it? Right. There we go. Love Me Tender EP. And we have 3 colour variants, both reproduced in the HMV label. And this is our friend again. It says UK Japan 2006. So between 2006 and 2013 at least, they certainly had a go at knocking out quite a lot of counterfeits. Now, what's interesting, I think, is that, you know, they make no attempt to pass these off as originals, because you get your beautiful coloured vinyl, which, you know, doesn't take a lot of working out that they didn't release these in 1956 looking like this. So, you know, they're not trying to pass them off. But I suppose if you got the black vinyl version, you might give it a sort of is it or isn't it? But again, you know, the reproduction of the label I think is fantastic. So that's really it in terms of what I've got for what I'd say are pure vinyl bootlegs from, you know, that period. But as a resource, these 2 books, Bootleg Elvis and this one, are, you know, if you want to get them and you're interested in bootlegs, I'd say snap them up if you see them. What's rather disappointing is there was supposed to be a sequel to this, although there's it says 12-inch rather than 12, but 12-inch from cover to vinyl, the artistry of Elvis bootlegs, available summer 29. So this one covered 7 and 10-inch, and there was going to be a 12-inch. Never appeared. I don't know what happened to it, but it never appeared, which is a shame, because I'd love to, you know, had the full set. But there you go. As I say, I wanted to kind of illustrate the 2 books and use them to illustrate what original vinyl bootlegs I have. But let me know in the comments what you think. Are you a lover of bootlegs, original bootlegs? What do you think of bootlegs these days? Are you completely anti-bootlegs? Let me know what you think. Love to hear your comments. As I say, I'm not particularly bothered by the fact that they're not official product. I like to have them in the collection, but I totally understand people that go the other way. Let me know about the books as well. Do you have the books? Did you get the books at the time? If anyone out there has ever been involved in the bootleg industry and fancies just leaving a comment to let me know what you think, that would be great. But just let me know what you think. As ever, thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I hope that you're going to be able to join me for next week's episode. But until next week, have a great week. Take care, everyone. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.